The NaviPro IT Break, 15 entertaining minutes with our experts on hot topics. They're designed to help you keep up to date on the latest IT trends.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this episode 51 of our IT Break. I'm your host, Pierre Tocci, Senior Consultant IT Transformation Strategies at NaviPro. And for this 51st episode, my guest today is Stan Wisseman, security strategist at Micro Focus. Good afternoon, Stan.
Good afternoon, Pierre.
Well, Stan, let's reemphasize that in your past roles, you were a Chief Information Security Officer. So you know the ins and outs of consequences on a security breach. You've probably lived it.
I did.
So you are in the best seat to tell me about how we lived through this and what to do about API security. Stan, could you circle back to our episode 50 that we made together and tell me why API security matters in the world of coding programmers?
So, Pierre, in our last episode, we were talking about the importance of building security in to the lifecycle of an application's development process, and specifically around DevOps, so making it DevSecOps. Mm-hmm. And one of the aspects of building it in is around the application programming interfaces of applications. And though APIs are not new, they've been around for decades. But over the last few years, the architecture of applications have changed traditionally, right? have changed significantly. And one of the things that unfortunately is occurring is that the bad actors are taking advantage of APIs and their weaknesses.
Yeah. We were discussing previously that you and I go way back 30 years ago in that world. And I remember 30 years ago, writing code was procedural. We had an application that did everything for the application for the people that were using it. And the people using it were enterprise people. And that was it. Nothing was getting beyond the network. That landscape has changed because the network is the world right now. It's global. So do the reach of the customers.
Well, I think another aspect of the change was if you think about what we have now with our mobile devices, right? As you point out, in the past, you had in the older days, right, an individual that was using a browser to access an application, and the processing power is back on the server. It didn't really work when you changed the form factor to a mobile device. And so the architecture changed. And so a lot of that processing power has shifted over to the mobile device. And the APIs, likewise, are heavily used to allow these mobile applications to, in real time, check on things if you're doing your balances on your bank account, on your transfers, on your seating availability, right? There's all this functionality that's supported by these APIs. And so far-reaching implications as far as the functionality that's moved from that sturdy back-end world to a more highly agile, changing mobile world. And honestly, we in our testing have found that mobile applications are significantly less secure than typical enterprise back-end applications. And so that's another factor that we've seen come to play.
One thing that has changed over the years, and if we circle back to the last episodes, we're discussing how to protect your code from bad actors entering applications and using our application as a vehicle to go into customers' money. That's what they do. Last big attacks is what they've done. Now we're flipping the story. My goal as a company is to open up my application so that there's a community that gravitates around needs, uses my application, and brings more features through APIs. Am I exposing myself?
Right. I mean, by this very design, I mean, the APIs are exposing application logic and data, and therefore providing access, hopefully authorized access, to multiple sources and potentially sensitive information on these mission critical applications and underlying back-end databases, right? But as a result, you've also increased your attack surface exponentially as well. And a lot of times these APIs are pretty well documented. And that's, again, to enable other developers to be able to, use them effectively. But it also gives them, the bad actors, sort of like a playbook of how they can leverage the APIs to then get access to the data they want.
Because obviously today in this marketplace, I have an application that I want to, make public and make a lot of money and have a community. My competition is the Salesforce of this world with their marketplace, Microsoft with their add-ons, NetSuite with their marketplace, and so forth. So these guys have opened up their code through a bunch of the, other applications that make up this huge stack. I want to achieve the same stuff, but obviously I don't have the means of these guys. How do I achieve this? What do I do? What do I look for? What do I protect myself from?
So, good question. A lot of folks that are familiar with web application security are familiar with such industry tools out there as the OWASP Top 10. And so, Open Web Application Security Project, which started in the early 2000s, started issuing every couple of years an update on the top 10 web application vulnerabilities. It's a great tool to leverage. It's not meant to be all comprehensive as far as all the things you need to worry about, but here's a set that we are seeing most prevalent out in the industry, like SQL injection has always been one of the top ones on the list. They've also, in 2019, rolled out a top 10 for API security. Again, same caveat, it's not comprehensive in the sense that it doesn't hit everything you need to be concerned about, but here are things you should be worried about. Things like broken object level authentication, excessive data exposure. Are you exposing more than you really need to be through the API call and function? Broken user authentication, like mass assignment, the fact that you're able to, assign all these objects and get access to them through that call. Insufficient logging and monitoring. Are you even aware of who is actually leveraging the API? And are you able to then, after an incident, determine who was it? What was the potential source of that leakage that occurred? And so again, it's a helpful list of understanding what you potentially could focus on. But without a doubt, there are tools like some we provide that helps you do vulnerability scans that leverage things like the OWASP Top 10, but other things as well, like the common weaknesses enumerations, to be able to identify some of these vulnerabilities.
Because what you just said is it ought to sound trivial, but when you think of it first, it's not. If you open up your API to the public or to the community, you are inviting hackers to the lunch. That's what you're doing.
Yes, you are.
So if there's a free buffet out there, it's a self-serve for them as well, and they will try you.
They will, and one of the things is you need to have visibility as to what's being exposed, and that may not be an attack surface that you're even thinking about. And so that is the thing that I'm trying to raise here as a problem, is that organizations can't ignore the APIs that their applications are exposing.
Give me an example of what kind of controls, at the high level, I should be considering.
So again, you need to be scanning for vulnerabilities, and it's a bit more challenging than your typical web application vulnerability scan, because you can't really crawl an API or set of APIs in an application. And so there are other tools out there to help give visibility of what APIs exist. So you can leverage these API collaboration tools to get that exposure and then feed that into vulnerability scanning tools like WeaponsSpec. And so that is one of the things that will help you understand that set of risks that you've exposed with your application API set of functions. The other thing that you may want to consider is leveraging an API security manager or gateway. It provides a governance kind of framework. I relate it back to somewhat of like the CASB for cloud access, but it gives you that ability to ensure that you have real-time monitoring of what APIs are exposed and how you're controlling that access and augment it with monitoring logging. So if it's not built into the APIs themselves, you can actually create those logs yourself.
So could I sort of follow who's trying to log in, their origin, whether they're flagged as bad actors, geography-wise, country-wise, politically-wise, stuff like that?
Correct. You should be able to get some of that fidelity as far as who's coming in. The specifics vary by the product as far as its ability to do that.
Yeah, because actually, that could be a very good marketing tool. I will explain myself. If you track the bad actors, you will also know the volume of people trying to look at your API and showing interest in your API. So it could be, doubles a less positive intention, but a very positive use of having an API security gateway.
No, that's true. That way you're actually able to can sort of like get a handle on how effective you are in your mission for the application itself and how B2B or whatever the connectivity you're expecting, if you're getting the volume you want and desire.
Let's not say, we want to implement this because we're going public. We want to open up our application. We want to build this big community because, this is where the money comes from. The more people gravitating around your application, well, the more likelihood you'll have a better audience and so forth. That's the way it works. What kind of team do I need to do this? Do I need security architects? Do I need network people? How do I implement this?
So again, the same team that you would have that would do like a dynamic application security scan, that could be part of your, if you have a QA team or if you have a penetration testing kind of effort. The tooling that they use should have the capability to also scan for APIs and their vulnerabilities. And you should enable that. So that's another thing. Just because it has the capability, sometimes folks don't enable that capability and actually get the results and act on it. So that same team could perform that function.
So we're going back to what we discussed in episode 50. API analysis or management, or however we want to call it, should be part of the architecting discussion. I mean, it should not come after the fact. A year later and say, hey, we're having success. Let's go out there.
That's correct. I mean, you should have at the forefront an understanding of what APIs you need to actually expose to be able to perform the functions that you need, right? Or expose to allow for the services that are working with your application. And in that context, do a level of threat modeling. Say, well, is this really appropriate? Could it be exploited? What's the misuse case as opposed to just the typical use case? How could it be abused and misused? And then as you progress and it's built and it's deployed, you're scanning to see if the implementation has that truly mitigated the potential threats, or if it's left some weaknesses and they potentially forgot to do something that authentication is not really being asked for in the API.
That is very interesting, Stan. We have a few seconds left. I would say as a closing argument that the worst thing that could happen to you is to be successful with your application as you opened it, because a lot of bad people will want to get to it.
That's true. I mean, I think that we have found that APIs are not only being used by businesses, but They're customer-facing, partner-facing, internal applications use them right, and they're being used by microservices, SaaS applications. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And so recognize that this is an attack surface that you have to think about and control, and don't be blindsided.
Yeah, because the way to go today is to have open applications through open APIs. Otherwise, you're stuck in your corner. You're not going to make it. Thank you, Stan. That was very interesting. Part 51 of part 50. That was great. Thank you again for having joined me this afternoon. Folks, this was episode 51 of our IT Breaks. Just to remind you that preceding episodes are all on our hub of content at navipro.hub.com. Sorry, hub.navipro.com, along with several marketing pieces, previous webinars, seminars. Stan, thank you again for this 50 and 50th episode.
You're most welcome, Pierre. It's great talking with you.
All right. And hopefully we'll see you all again on episode 52 to come soon. Thank you again.
You want access to a range of cutting-edge information? Go to our online content area at hub.navipro.com.